Foundation, and thanks for joining us, to our in-person audience and also to our online audience as well. Glad you could make it today. So if you're new and you don't know the format of class, in just a moment I'm going to hand it over to Guy and he'll give about an hour-long talk. Then we'll take a short 5-minute break and we'll come back for part 2 of class, which is an open Q&A discussion time that you can participate in, both in person and online. And I'll be telling you more about that when we get to that point in our day. And we'll be going to about 11:30 today, so hope you can stay tuned for the entire broadcast, and if not, we'll have replays available for today's class, and again, I'll tell you more about that later. For those of you here in the room, if you could check if you have cell phone, if you brought a cell phone in, and just make sure that you turn it off or put it in silent mode, that would be appreciated as we do record all these talks. And for our online audience, if you run into any technical problems during the broadcast, you can reach out to us in the question box or the chat area. You can send an email to support@guyfinley.org, and that comes to me, and I'll do my best to help you. And I also just wanted to make a note for our online audience. Guy often writes key lessons, and like today we have a special writing that he's going to be reading during class. All of the details for the writings and the links to the special writing, all of that is in the reminder email that you got an hour before class. Or if you're tuning in on YouTube or Facebook, you can also look in the description area that's right there with the post, the live post, and you'll find all of that information. All right, so I'm just going to let you know the topic, and then I'll hand it over to Guy. Our topic for today is enter the gateway to your greatest spiritual possibilities.
Good morning, everyone. And good morning to all of you, wherever you are in the world, whatever day it is, whatever time it is. I'm glad that you're able to join us. As always, I'm glad that you're here. I'll read the key lesson, and then I have some comments to make before I actually get into the material that I intend to share with you today. Here's the key lesson. There can be no life after death without realizing an order of love that has no fear of dying. This timeless witness to its own creation doesn't see death as the end of life, but rather as its invisible partner in a ceaseless act of love. That isn't afraid of dying. Most of the world would have no interest in that key lesson. And those that do have some interest in this idea that there is another order of life beyond which, yet through which, a man or a woman can enter into a relationship with another order of his or her own being. And in the development of that relationship and all of the discoveries that it is not just based upon, but that leads a human being along and through that journey, that man or woman finds out that while they're in a body and have friends and family, and all of which, including this world, that one day will pass, there is something that dwells within them that never passes. And that has always been with them and never will not be with them, waiting for that man or woman to discover within themselves that divine spark, that essential spirit that only the human soul can properly reflect and be the reflection of. The human mind knows nothing of it, and it can't know anything of it, because the human mind, the present consciousness, is a divided consciousness, and it has no understanding, let alone a relationship with anything that is holy. Now, if anything I've said is of any interest to you, then you understand that at all points in time, whenever I'm talking, there is a principal context for everything that is spoken. And that principal context, for those of whom it is true, is that we all understand we are called to another kind of life. However I got there, at whatever age it dawned on you or me, that this world, if it was capable of bringing this heart into some form of fulfillment, it would have done so a long time ago, and it has never done so. And at a certain point, you'd think a person would realize it's not going to. And that's where a certain separation takes place in this world, sort of the giant separation of wheat from chaff at the biggest possible scale. But there is a danger in this journey for those who make it. And I want you to understand something, that the interior path is actually fraught with dangers, but every danger along the interior road is only what a human being has not yet recognized about their own unconscious nature. Which means that there is nothing that you will ever meet if you proceed along the way and actually in some way dedicate yourself to getting past the everyday fears and the arrogance and the selfishness and all of the materialism. And I'm not talking about owning things. Materialism isn't owning things. Materialism begins with identification. And it's out of identification that materialism is born. That there's a certain danger that I'm going to explain, because I have to. If I don't, then I'm going to go through this material and you will make a tragic mistake. First, I want you to understand, I've said it a million times, never believe a word I say, ever. That's a huge danger. A person takes the explanation of something spiritual and some corresponding part of their intellect that can track it, and then turns that explanation of something that's true into an affirmation of themselves as being someone who actually understands the explanation. You cannot understand an explanation when it becomes an affirmation for you. I hear it all the time. I know I'm not a bad person when I see something bad. That's not the same as knowing that you're not a bad person. That's you taking the opposite side of seeing something in yourself you don't want to see. So it's just another form of identification. And explanations turn into affirmations. Affirmations turn into identification. And identification is the antithesis of the development of this capacity you have for a relationship with the divine. It is not about affirmations. Out of affirmation is imitation. Can you understand that? You affirm something, you are imitating an image that you have picked up somewhere along the line. You heard something that was spiritually soothing to you, and it becomes an affirmation, an identification, and an imitation, so that you're always looking in the mirror of this idea for yourself instead of seeing through the nature that has to look for an idea to save itself. That was important if you could hear it. It's not about explanations. They are not intended to lead to affirmation. Explanations are intended to help stimulate you to begin the real process, which is exploration. Exploration, not explanation. Because out of authentic exploration comes the need for self-observation. Now I must learn to see for myself what this man said is true, that I could suspect is so, but I must validate it myself, or otherwise I become a victim victim of the affirmation I make out of it and the subsequent identification. Because then I'm always shielding myself from anything that doesn't align with the picture that I have of myself. Yes or no? And out of that willingness to observe oneself, then one starts to participate. Participation becomes the path. Participation becomes the path. Not a path produced by which you've imagined yourself going someplace, but the recognition that you are always a participant in a life that is being given to you. A life that is being given to you, not a participant in a life that you are trying to give yourself so that you can affirm the image you have of yourself as being someone spiritual. That's why it's so difficult for men and women. Because you see, in the end, what's required of you, of me, of anyone who would know anything about a life with Christ, a life with the divine, a Buddhic nature, anybody who would ever seek something like that has to understand everything they identify with that tells them they're on the way is the antithesis of the development of the soul. Because the soul develops as this unconscious nature recedes. It isn't buried, but it becomes and serves the purpose of the seed that it is meant to be, something I'm going to go into depth with you today about. But I want to set the stage. And how long did I take to do that? 11 minutes. Time is very valuable to me. I want it to be valuable to you too. Take a nice deep breath. I have a story to tell you. And just so it's clear, sometimes having the relationship that I do with some of the students that are here or that live locally that I see from time to time, sometimes I see certain things, and it's never an individual. Every self-compromising characteristic that any individual has, all individuals have. It's just a question of scale. So this is a story that some of you need to really pay attention to. I'll tell you that much. Take a nice deep breath. How many of you are excited? There was once a man who felt, to some extent, as all of you do, that he needed to go beyond a certain shallow world, a superficial existence that he was somewhat aware of the fact that in spite of all he had, wasn't going to give him the satisfaction that he could not answer through the things that he pursued in the world around him. And he longed to do that, but he also, at the same time, as he had this wish to make this journey, to build and follow a new path for himself, he was also terribly taken up with imagining and constantly rebuilding his road through this life. Because we all come, whether we know it or not, if there's anything in us given to us by God, to a point, that point, what did Thoreau call it? Not Thoreau, Robert Frost, where the road's divided, the less traveled road. And the less traveled road is always the road where I'm about to take the same path to ensure that everything that I am and that I have and where I'm going and everything stays perfectly good. And then when I get to that end of the road, then I'll take the other path and I'll find something that's divine. And I'm going to try to do both at the same time. And I want you to understand you can't do both at the same time. One has to be first, period. One has to be first. This is what nobody wants to hear. What do you think? You remember the first time you ever heard sell all and follow me? You go, well, not everything. Not give up everything. What are you talking? Well, Christ wasn't talking about your clothes or your car, although he was alluding to the idea that the reason you have the things you do is because you're busy building a road for yourself where you've already outlined, it's like some kind of giant psychological monopoly game. Avoid everything that says go to jail, go straight to Boardwalk. What was the most expensive property on Monopoly? Most of you don't even, it was Boardwalk, wasn't it? Parkway. Build the hotels there. That's how we see it. And by the way, that's why life goes around and around and around. Always your experience being determined by the throw of a dice, and it's not you throwing it. So let me get back to the main idea. So he wanted to keep building his world and a road to the new world at the same time. How many of you can see that that's pretty much what, yeah, okay. Now, because he wanted to build a road both directions, he never could really dedicate himself to anything. He was always torn, always a certain conflict in him. But because of the conflict and the fact that he wanted to do it, he always would try to get others to help him build the road that A, he couldn't build for himself, and B, that he thought unless he had others to help him build it, he was never going to build that road. That's part of the dependency upon expectation, and it's part of relying upon other men and women in your life to do for you what you will not do for yourself. What do you think blame is? Blame is what happens when you have asked somebody, whether you spoke it or not, to be someone or something that you need them to be, and when they are not what you need them to be so that you can march along the road you've imagined, then you blame them. That's what blame is. Blame is you not helping me be who I want to be when I want to be it. So it wasn't long before people could see this guy was always asking people to do the good that he said was good, but he didn't want to do the work for the good himself. You following me? You know the old expression, if the shoe fits, what do? Yeah, you don't throw it away. So, like I said, this is the story of humanity. Now, this story has two endings. The first ending is obvious. The first ending is that basically more and more he finds himself feeling alone. More and more men and women want nothing to do with his schemes because it's evident they're schemes, and that he wants people to do for him what he won't do for himself. That road goes round and round. Round and down is where it goes. But the happy ending, ready for the happy ending? He begins to see it. And you would think, actually, you would begin to see it. When people walk the other way, when you see them coming to you, if you see someone walk the other way when you're walking up to them, it's a pretty good indication that they don't want anything to do with you. And he began to realize that all he was doing was talking the walk. End of story. He had become a master talker. And in the world, people love talkers. You know why people love talkers in the world? Because nobody has to walk. They just have to dream. They just have to build another imagined road, go down that road, and then find why it didn't go anywhere, and then find somebody else to blame. Always finding fault with everyone and everything outside of you for them not being able to fulfill the road you intended them to build for you. And nobody can build your road. So he begins to see this. And then one day, and not because he was a happy camper, but because a certain dichotomy was growing in him, a conflict. And what's the conflict? Inwardly, I'm put into this world to do what I can in this world in order to sustain my wish to build the road up. I'm using the words build the road up, but you'll understand we're not building anything. And one day the conflict becomes so great and he actually sees himself as he is. And when he sees himself as he is, instead of asking people to help him do whatever it is that he thought should be done to build this road back home, he starts to work for himself. He actually starts to do work on his own. Not waiting for other people to say, let's go, not waiting for someone to say, how about this? He actually begins on his own. And I'm going to explain this in great depth at the end, what that means. And what do you think happens when that man starts to take the road less traveled? What do you think happens? Let me tell you. A few people actually see he's doing it. And then they want to help him. You'll see in your life that as you go along, the more you are willing to act on your own in order to continue your development, the more you will draw to yourselves these synchronistic events. People come out of the woodwork. Someone you wouldn't know, nothing you could possibly expect, will appear on the spot and give you the next stone to lay on that road for you to step upon. You'll think it's a miracle that it happens. Then you'll start to understand someone is watching you and meeting you more than halfway. You know the story of the prodigal son? The story of a prodigal son is not about some man who left his father's house. It is the story of humanity and this consciousness. And a consciousness that has wandered so far away, but as individuals, as instruments of that consciousness, realize what they have done and what has taken place, then they turn. The idea of metanoia, repentance. They turn, and when they turn, their Father, seeing them at a great distance, meets them halfway. That is a real experience, not something that you affirm and wait for and hope, but that you attract to yourself through your work as it is given to you to do and not for others to do for you. Now, one of the ways that I can tell you I know that story is true, because that was my story as a boy. When I was in high school, grammar school, I was the master idea maker. Every day it was a new idea, and every day was looking for people to do it for me. No, I'm honest to God. I invented more companies by the time I was 12 years old than you could possibly imagine. That's what my mind did. I would see opportunities in the world, because I was raised in a very successful family, and wanting to be like my father, who I thought, without knowing it at that time, was what it meant to be a successful person. Then I spent my time coming up with great ideas, and then I'd go get my friends and I'd get them all pumped up about how this idea is going to work and we're going to be really rich. And boy, but ask me if I ever did anything. I didn't want to do anything. I just wanted to get people excited. And then if they got excited, I'd just get a part of what they did. So I was always a kind of a vampire as a boy. It's quite clear to me now what I was like. Now, how does a boy, take a deep breath up, dial it down. How does a boy, 11, 12 years old, get to the place where he is so reliant on others to do for him what he will not even try to do for himself? How does a boy become so reliant like that? Reliant on what? Try to follow me. There is a sense of inadequacy in this consciousness of ours. It is a constant sense of inadequacy. What do you think relying on others is about, other than the fear of your own inadequacy? Can any of you see that? Is it too deep, too quick? I need you to do this for me. Why? I can tell you again, because, well, I don't really want to do it. And why don't I really want to do it? Well, for one thing, not sure if I can. Number two, I've been conditioned from the time I was a paramecium to avoid at all costs any form of failure, because I grew up seeing failure being punished and so-called success being rewarded. That's all I saw growing up. What did you see growing up? You should be like this. And so you grow up thinking that's how you're supposed to be. If you want to be a successful human being, be like dad, be like mom, be like somebody else in the world, because you don't know who else to be when you are growing up other than what you see in the world and is called as being successful. Please, yes or no out loud. So out of that, this constant unseen sense of dependency. We don't see that we're dependent on an image that we've imitated. We don't see it because to us, we're doing our thing. But the fact of the matter is, if you can see it, that all of that imagery, all of those ideas, these thoughts about oneself, they were all born out of this idea that somehow or other, I have to achieve what it is that will allow me to build this life for myself. And when I get it all built out, then I will be a bright, happy human being. But there's only one problem with that set of plans. Who can tell me what the problem is? It doesn't work. But here's the main point. All of that sense of inadequacy would not exist without comparison. All of that inadequacy would not exist without comparison. Now, what is a 12-year-old boy comparing himself to? What is a 40-year-old man comparing himself to when he feels like he hasn't succeeded? What is a very rich person comparing themselves to when they look at someone else and think to themselves, I need more than I have? It's the same consciousness in different roles, in different times, in different human beings, each and every one feeding, as it were, on an unseen sense of being inadequate. An unseen sense of being inadequate. Isn't comparison me measuring myself to something else? Isn't that what comparison is? So here I am as a boy growing up. My world is filled with all these social images. Why do you think suicide is so prevalent today among the youth? Why do you think that is? It's because they have been further indoctrinated into a world where they are constantly comparing themselves to someone else. That's the only life they know. And when you can't measure up to what you compare yourself to, then the only choice is to disappear, become socially inadequate, have social anxiety disorder. All of the things connected to the corruption of the world that we're in today is because this consciousness has created in its own image something that makes something out of something that I should be. Then when I can't live up to what I'm supposed to be, then I have to avoid seeing that at all costs. Depression, anxiety. It's a plague. But the world wants to blame the plague on the culture. The culture didn't create the plague. The plague created the culture. Can you see that at all? You wonder why your children and your grandchildren are wrecks. They're wrecks because all they have in their life are parents and grandparents and adults around them. Each and every one is the living example of a person who is always feeling inadequate. And in order to hide the inadequacy, they are aggressive, they are ambitious, they seek to control. All of that is born out of that. And if you doubt that's true, then you tell me, what is it that makes another human being want to control any other human being? Is it because I feel adequate? Or is it because I feel adequate and the only way I can make sure that I am is to get everyone and everything to do what I need them to do so that I don't feel this disturbance in myself anymore? I'm asking if you can see this with me. We're born into a conditioned world where wanting to be like someone else runs so deep in this consciousness we don't even know it happened to us. And then when I can't live up to being Steve Jobs or Bubba Watson, or I can't live up to being Saint Isaac the Syrian, I can't live up to the image, I can't live up to being Christ-like. The only thing I can do then is all the time figure out how to escape the conditions that show me that I'm not what I've imagined myself to be. Blame is escape. Blame is escape. Excuses are escapes. Justification escapes. But we don't see it as such, do we? Because when we're justifying, explaining, do you think to yourself you're escaping seeing this consciousness that you're in? Or are you explaining and justifying because you're sure, as you're identified with what? Not with the positive image, but with the fear that somebody's going to actually see me the way that I am. Because I don't want to see myself the way I am. By the way, one of the ways you can know what I'm saying is true, how many of you ever have moments where you do not want to see yourself as you are? Please, I beg of you, explain to me how it's possible to not want to see yourself as you are. Is it possible without comparison? Can I avoid seeing myself as I am, seeing this selfishness, this aggression, this control? Can I avoid not want to see that without something in me comparing that experience to what I should be and how I ought to be? You can't have it. And that consciousness breeds itself. And it will breed all the relationships it needs to keep itself in place. So there's something in us that already knows who and what we're supposed to be. But if we're doing any work, we can see that that doesn't work. Let me bring up the second key lesson. There's no solution to that suffering that I just described. What's the solution then? I'm going to read it to you. It's an invitation for an exploration, not an explanation to be affirmed. It is an invitation for exploration, not an explanation for you to affirm. Do you understand that? When you realize that no one on this earth can be like you, that no other soul can know the beauty, the sorrow, the light, and the darkness you alone are given to see, then you will no longer want to be like anyone else on this earth. You will at last be the fearless individual that your heart of hearts has called you to be. What a terrible thing has happened to humanity. You and I have been brought into a world where we are convinced that we are supposed to be like someone. It runs so deep, it's a current that is the very source of conflict itself. And the more the current runs, the greater the friction, the more a person looks for someone to be. Can I not want to be who I am in this moment unless something in me already knows who it should be? You know what freedom is, and I'll get into it again at the end of the talk. Freedom is when you realize that not only are you not supposed to be anyone else than who you are, but that who you are is being given everything you need to be free. That there's no moment in your life, not one split second, that isn't a relationship you are intended to have consciously with the revelation of creation itself. But not some hoi polloi, pie in the sky revelation of creation itself, but you as a creation being revealed to yourself moment to moment, and in each revelation, the end of the continuation of the past that brought you to that moment. Every moment of your life. So there's no need to go look for someone to be or to do. You don't have to influence any human being. You have no responsibility. Your first responsibility is to be in your life as you are, watching the consciousness that doesn't want you to be in your life as you are, watching the consciousness that's always chatting it up, watching the consciousness trying to control how other people see you, watching that consciousness that cannot stop keeping itself wired up so that in that excitement and that stimulation, it can find the next thing it needs to do and to be to satisfy itself, in spite of the fact that, like the hungry ghost, it can drink and eat everything the world will give it, everyone that will ever throw you a bone of approval, and you will still be starving at the end of each and every one of those meals. Where is that life? I don't honestly, unless a person is through their proper attraction to the almost unceasing revelations of how afraid they are, of how dependent they are on wanting people to like them and to confirm them, of this utter dependency that expresses itself through demands on other human beings. This urgency connected to trying to make the world do and be and act as you need it to do and be and act in that moment. Until a person actually begins to experience some of that, there's no chance in heaven that they would ever realize that all that they have done has brought them to that point. And that point is the dividing point. And it happens every day in 1,000 different ways. Then that man or woman begins a completely different journey. There is a passage in the New Testament, and I hope I can get through several of these from east and west, and not as an explanation, and sweet God, not as a validation of what I'm trying to show you. You should be very wary of anyone who tries to validate something to you that they want you to know. You should be very wary of anybody that wants to validate in your mind what they're telling you. What is evident requires no validation. What is evident is right in front of us all the time. But again, we don't want what is right in front of us. We want explanations so that we can turn them into affirmations. Then we can go about our business believing we're spiritual people. And then yes or no. Then all of a sudden, oh my God, what was that? I'm the worst person that ever lived. You know, when you say things like that, you know what you're doing? You are allowing something in you to identify with something it's compared itself to and prove to you that you're nothing like what you don't want to be in that moment. And if you want to know what you're like in that moment, catch what's trying to tell you you're not like that. That's what you're like. This is why this work isn't popular, by the way, in case that's not evident to you. Christ said, I say unto you, if you have faith as a grain of a mustard seed, you shall say to that mountain, move, and it'll go to yonder place, and nothing will be impossible to you. If you have the faith of a mustard seed, what in the world was he talking about? The faith of a mustard seed. In other passages, it's all hard to find because of the way that mechanical religion has corrupted truthful ideas. And by the way, do you know why that happened? It was because the so-called people in charge wanted to find some way to not only make what is for the most of humanity bitter and indigestible, wanted to make human beings become reliant upon them as the gateway, as the keepers of the keys to the kingdom of heaven. And only I know, and only I can teach you. And you must come to me and confess all the things that you've done. You must be terribly sorry for the kind of human being you are, and at all costs repent because of the way you are. And one day, if you're lucky, maybe when you die, God will save you and bring you up to the kingdom of heaven. And every last part of that's trash. Every last part of that's trash. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. That means in the original language that kingdom is ever present. It isn't coming in some time. It is coming as a revelation through this consciousness, and that you as a human being are intended to participate in that revelation of that kingdom come, because in participating in the revelation of the kingdom come, you're participating in the kingdom as it's revealed. You're participating in the kingdom as it's revealed. Not some kingdom with chocolate growing on trees and virgins lining the street. The kingdom that's difficult because it requires, in order to participate in it, the sacrifice of the part of ourselves that has sold everything in order to make the images of ourselves real. The seed of a mustard seed. You know the saying, as above, so below, yeah? I was interested when I was working on these ideas. I wanted to learn a little bit more about seeds. But first this. Unless the seed lay in the ground and by it alone it dies, nothing happens, right? All that. You know some of that passage. What is a seed? First, a seed is an embryo that is alive. They can't tell you what it's alive with. They just know it's alive. and it is surrounded by a husk. The embryo is alive, the husk is dead. There is no life in the husk. Over time, the husk becomes more and more, what's the word I want? The outer cell layers of the husk become increasingly crushed, more and more crystallized. All of these are images and ideas from the old work. That embryo, it's in there and it's being pressed upon. It's locked in by the husk. In this life, you and I are a seed. This body is a seed. It isn't the fulfillment of our possibility. It is the seed of our possibility and nothing more. But we live completely for the husk. Do you see that or not? The husk says, have this, do this, get that. Add to the husk. The embryo lives under a completely different set of laws than does the husk, but they're joined together in a certain place and time. So that husk, as it incorporates the seed, does what? Let's keep looking at it. What is that embryo born to do? See, I love this. If you can see it, it teaches us so much. What is that embryo born to do? To seek. The embryo is not going down there like, what's all this darkness? I don't know. Maybe it's as good in here. I'm not sure. No, the embryo is sitting there and it wants to do what? It wants to emerge. But there's a problem with the emergence of the embryo, isn't there? What's the problem with the emergence of the embryo? A husk. And so now the very thing that has encased it becomes part of what strengthens it. And as that embryo pushes through, what is the embryo, once it breaks through the husk, what is it trying to do at that point? First it's seeking, now what is it doing? I know I'm anthropomorphizing a seed, but if you can see, what is the embryo then doing? It's exploring. It's out of the husk, it's exploring it. And what is it being drawn to? The light. So here's the embryo, breaks out, and it starts to explore. And what is it exploring? What is the embryo? We're still talking about a kernel of corn. If it had abided in the ground alone and got through all that, now it's exploring. What is it exploring? What is that thing, the little shoot, what's exploring? It's possibilities. It's going to become more than the embryo. It's going to become a living plant. And what's one of the highest possibilities of that living plant? Again, as above, so below. What's it going to do? More seed. This is why Christ used all of those metaphors. Actually, a lot of teachers talk about nature so much. You look at it, Emerson or Thoreau, you look at the past masters, St. Francis. All this is just spelled out in front of us all the time. So that seed does what? It's there to fulfill the purpose of its existence. And the purpose of existence is to grow into something that it couldn't have known it was going to grow into. And when it does, then it will reseed itself, yes or no. That's, in one respect, a form of consciousness. But now the next level. If you can see, isn't that constantly going on? You look at springtime, isn't that going on all the time? Now what about a human being as a seed? Let's draw the parallel. What's the saying? Birds fly, fish swim, men pray. What does it mean, men pray? Men, women seek to rise and to reconnect, which is what prayer is. Prayer is reconnection. So here I am, inside of me there's something that wants to get out, doesn't it? I get out once in a while. You go and you captured by the colors of some bougainvillea, or you look at all the flowers, you look at all this magnificent growth, this new green. I love the new green. And you are in that moment transported into a different relationship with that life. And what is that different relationship with that life that you are transported into in that moment, other than the sudden experience that what I am looking at and the beauty and the color, while I'm looking it out there, I'm experiencing it in here. So what I'm actually experiencing isn't me apart from the world I see, but the experience of realizing the world I see is already a part of me. What I see as creation is not unfolding outside of me. I am experiencing its reflection in me, and without the reflection, there is nothing there. So now I'm actually experiencing, and it is. When you see beauty and your mind's not involved in it, when you see something that is true and you're not trying to explain it to yourself, you are for a moment in a relationship with another order of consciousness. Yes? So here I am, and I want to how many ways can you say it? I want to be the one that instruments what passes through me, as opposed to being made an instrument of the passage of thoughts and feelings that I have no idea are negative or destructive. I want to be the one who can choose to say what I want to say when I want to say it to someone. I want to be someone who doesn't punish other people because of my demands. I want to be self-reliant. Self-reliant. I don't want to look to any other human being on this planet to confirm who I think I am, because that's called a nightmare. I don't want to live from beliefs. I want to know from direct experience what that moment is instructing me to do and to be, and to follow those instructions clearly when they're given without fear of consequence, because something in me is comparing what may happen if I actually do or say or actually sell all and follow. That's what I want. I don't want a hearsay life. I don't want a life where I'm talking to myself about spiritual things. You fill in the blank, because I could go for an hour that way, and every last one would be something that the soul in this spirit longs for. That longing, to the next part of the talk, is part of what I think Joseph Campbell, called the hero's journey. Are you familiar with that idea, the hero's journey? The idea is that inside of every human being, individually, there's no group hero's journey. There's no political hero's journey. There's no religion that has a hero's journey, that you belong to any particular sect. It is an individual journey, which is why almost no one makes it, I might add. That journey is something that you're drawn to. You're drawn to do what? You're drawn, the embryo of the soul in its nascent state is drawn to escape the husk of this conditioning. Drawn to escape the husk of this conditioning. Now, how would I even know that I'm conditioned unless something in me, a light that dwells in the darkness that comprehends it not, were capable of looking in that moment and realizing, you know what? I just lied. I just compromised myself. I just boiled over and popped at somebody because I blame them, but I realized I'm always in that kind of pain. That's the hero's journey, where a person is drawn to go through the complete transformation of one's self so they can realize oneself. I was thinking, the prodigal son, you can name prodigal son, Moses, Buddha, the labors of Hercules, Odysseus. You could go through the whole deal, and you'd find that every last one of these teachers, these men, these women, every last one of them was what? They took a journey. They took a journey. And the journey that they took, that you and I imagine we would like to take, the journey they took was what? It was what that embryo in themselves was given to do, just as the seed of a mustard seed. A mustard seed doesn't try to figure out how to be a mustard tree. It's built into the mustard seed. You don't have to figure out how to be a real human being. It's built into you. You're meant to be a real human being. But we're not real human beings. You know why? Because we're trying to be real human beings. And you can't try to be real. That's fake. I'm asking you to see it. How many of you try to be real? Let me put on my real face. My real posture. My real tone. Transition. And no one in this world or any other world can undertake the journey that has been designed for you by the stars. Not any human being on this planet can have your journey, nor are they intended to have your journey. If and as you understand that, you will honor your journey. And your journey cannot be separated from the revelation of the seed and the husk that is being taken through it by an act of something that was there before the seed and the husk were there. Are you still following me? I don't know, maybe I've spoken about it. Have you ever marveled at the fact that you can be with a group of people, and if you're fortunate enough, present enough, you're sitting there and you know you're the only person in Walmart that knows you're in Walmart. Not one other person knows they're in Walmart. You know why? Because they're on the journey buying what they need to buy and do what they need to do to complete themselves as they imagine. Or Nordstrom's, not just Walmart, doesn't matter. And if I see something like that, then the whole, and I tell you, I don't know how God does it. The whole universe has laid itself out in that moment to bring you to that moment, to show you something only you can see about that moment. And when you see the one thing that has been brought there for you to go through and to exit other than you went in, the whole moment changes on the spot, and you're free from the person who walked into that moment. You're free from yourself because your true nature has been reborn. The husk served its purpose. The husk, who I was 2 seconds before, is the husk. Who I wanted to be when I was growing up and didn't is the husk. Who I need you to see me as being is the husk. My regrets, the husk. I lost my temper. I hurt my younger brother when I was growing up. The husk. And so everything is colored that way. But then one day, by the grace of God, because you have understood the necessity of that individual journey, there you are, and suddenly something happens, and the same exact consciousness wants to come up and do the exact same thing. Have you ever wanted to tie somebody up and put a gag over their mouth? Come on, honestly. That's what I did to my younger brother when I was a kid, he was a kid. I got tired of him trying to hang out with me, so I wrapped him up in duct tape and gagged him. And he fell and he hurt himself. I had remorse the very moment that happened, but the fact of the matter is that, do you think that consciousness goes away, or are you still looking to bind people up and gag them? You know you are. Off with his head. And then you see it. Nobody else can see it because nobody else has been put together in the seed form that you've been put together. No other human being. But you want to be like something. You want to be someone. You can't, I cannot be more than I am being given in this very moment where I'm expressing this idea to you. Because if I receive the energy and the insight, the understanding that is being given to me in this moment to say these words to you, then I have completed the purpose of his life in that moment, and I'm free from wanting anything else out of it because I've done what I've been given to do. And no one else can do what I'm given to do. No one else can do what you're given to do. No one. And it doesn't matter whether you're the CEO of a corporation worth $40 billion or you're pushing a broom someplace in order to get food. It's all the same. And that man who pushes the broom, if he understands what I'm telling you, he's not interested in being the CEO. And the CEO doesn't look down on the man who's pushing the broom because he understands that all of us are in the same consciousness. And all intended to fulfill the consciousness for the purpose not of developing our individual character, but of transcending this consciousness that has somehow or other become identified with this character and that character and trying to protect it at all costs or pursue what it needs to support it. Everybody still following me? And further, that if we don't undertake that journey, we're dead meat. What happens to the kernel of corn if it doesn't do what the kernel of corn is given to do, which is to what? Rise, seek, explore, develop. What happens to that kernel of corn? Dies. It rots. Now, how do I do that? Because the only thing I know to do is have an idea and then try to imitate the idea. That's what I know to do. A thought comes, do that thought. This is out of James. But someone will say, you have faith and I have works. You have faith, I have works. Show me your faith without your works, and I will show you my faith by my works. And I will show you my faith by my works. You believe there is one God. You do well. Even the demons believe and tremble. But do you want to know, O foolish man, that faith without works is dead? Do you want to know that faith without works is dead? This is old language, but I hope you're following me. Was not Abraham our father justified by works when he offered Isaac his son on the altar? Imagine being told to give up what you love more than anything else for the sake of making the journey that only you can make, that only you can be a participant in, so that the whole of humanity, by the way, because whether that story happened that way or not makes no difference to the speaker, none. What makes a difference is that it's illustrating a point where one is asked to give up, to not be identified with something that they have enabled, that they can't live without, and then for the sake of the journey, understanding that that's a stumbling block. And in recognizing the stumbling block, to go ahead and make the offer. And in this point, Isaac was spared. But Abraham had to go through dying to all that he loved. And then it goes on. And the scripture was fulfilled. Abraham believed God and was accounted to him for righteousness. And he was called the friend of God. And he was called the friend of God. You see then that a man is justified by works, not by faith only. A man is justified, a woman is justified, not by faith alone, but by works. Now, ready for the brass tacks? Take a nice deep breath. It's not too painful, is it? What are the works? Remember I said the journey, Odysseus, the 10 labors, Hercules? You ready for a Herculean task? Your Herculean journey? Are you ready or not? That only you can take. Nobody else can take it. Do you want it or not? You don't look very excited in this thing. Do you or don't you? How about the Herculean task of not being sarcastic? How about the task of suffering in silence, the ceaseless judgment that you have of others? That's a journey. That's a Herculean task. How about the Herculean task of seeing that something wants you to regret something in your life and realizing that you have never stopped regretting and never will unless on the spot you sacrifice your firstborn. Do you understand the firstborn? That consciousness that created out of its experience in life all of these different images that it's so identified with, and that's the ceaseless sacrifice, is giving up these images. That consciousness that creates character and then protects them at all costs. How about the Herculean task of always in vain trying to have one-upmanship with somebody else? How many of you know, I want the last word? Do you understand that that's built into this consciousness, that you're not the only one that wants the last word? Do you? So is it you that wants the last word, or is it the consciousness that wants the last word? Is it you that wants to say the sarcastic remark or judge someone, or does this consciousness do that? Are you the only one who regrets what you've done, who feels inadequate to the task and is always second-guessing yourself? Are you the only one? Yes or no? I don't hear you. And yet, I am the only one who can have that awareness of that in the moment when it takes place. And that's where the journey is. Because in that moment, I cannot be given more than I am given to see. I cannot be given any more than I am willing to give up in that moment for what I see. And if I see what I'm given to see and I don't refuse it, and I accept the journey of that seed as it seeks to escape the husk of the conditioning, and for a split second I'm suddenly shown something new about myself that I didn't know was there before, not just the clarity of that unconscious nature, but the fact that that unconscious nature can be shelled off, it can be husked, and it can become chaff, and then the seed set free. In that moment, I know something that no other human being knows on the planet. And what is it that I know? That can happen all the time, and is meant to happen all the time. Then you tell me what there would be, what could you be afraid of? How could you be depending on any human being, reliant on others to support you, if you knew for a fact that every last moment that this habitual behavior was unfolding, that if in every last one of those moments you were being given that path to another place inwardly, another relationship? You following me? Let's have the special writing and we'll end the talk. This is a summary. I hope I made clear one thing. You're not supposed to be like anyone else. You're not supposed to compare yourself to another human being. You're supposed to use everything that happens to you every single moment of your life to be the next leg of the journey, because the seed is emerging. We don't think, what would be the purpose of a seed if there weren't a sun? Please? The seed and the sun don't exist separately. Neither does the soul and the Christ exist separately. The soul and the Buddha. They don't exist separately. What would be the point? For who? For what purpose? They are mutually dependent. They come into existence together. You and I have come into existence to fulfill the purpose of the specific seed form that we are. And each time we succeed in transcending the husk, it isn't just we who succeed, but the plant itself, as it grows, brings everyone into that new growth, because you're no longer meeting the moment that you used to meet the moment, being who you used to be. The husk of that fear, the husk of that hatred, of that sarcasm, of that cruelty, of that control. The courage to be free. Regardless of how one may feel in any given moment, real life can present no task before us for which we are inadequate. Yes, we may be unprepared at its outset, just as a leaf-bare late autumn tree can't know in advance the weight of a heavy winter snowfall, until its branches bend and maybe even break beneath it. But no tree is its limbs. And neither are we made less for what we can't do or carry when first challenged by something that seems too great for us to handle. Our truest strength lies in our ability to realize that whatever our present weakness may be, it is only temporary, providing we are willing to persist, to wade into what seems greater than we are, and to test that truth time and time again. You understand what the exercise is? You are being given one of the 10 labors of Hercules. The Herculean task of not rushing. The Herculean task of not fearing what tomorrow may bring. The Herculean task of getting out of your chair when you want to sit in it. The Herculean task of not talking about building a road, but getting out and hewing the way yourself. Do any one of those things. How many of you can think of your own personal Herculean task to come? Yes? How about not building an account? You see somebody and you immediately have an account. The Herculean task of not resenting somebody, of watching the resentment, not affirming that you're beyond resentment, but realizing it's there and it's always building its road. Do your task, one thing, and then you'll see you were meant for that. That was your work. No one else could do it. You do your work, you'll be given more work. And the more work you're given to do, the more sacrifice there will be, and the more you'll be in a relationship with something celestial who has built the road for you and just wants you to walk it so you can see your true nature and your real place in this world. Let's take a break. We'll come back and have our dialogue.
All right, everyone, welcome back to part 2 of class. We are just about to start our open question and answer session with Guy, and you are invited to participate, and we hope that you certainly will. So in just a moment, Guy will come back on, but I have just a few quick announcements. One is that I just want to let you know that Life of Learning Foundation sponsors these classes. We are a nonprofit organization based here in Southern Oregon, and our mission is to do exactly what we're doing here.
All right, everyone, welcome back to part 2 of class.
Sorry,
we are just about to start our open question and answer session with Guy, and you are invited.
An echo. Sorry about that.
That was
I'm monitoring several streams at once, and one of them just started to broadcast while I was giving my announcements there. Sorry. I was telling you about the fact that we are broadcasting from Life of Learning Foundation, and we are a nonprofit organization, a 501c3. And if you would like to help us in our mission to get these helpful and healing ideas out into the world as far as possible, please do consider making a donation. We have lots of longtime supporters, and we certainly appreciate all of the support that you've given us through the years. If you would like to make a one-time donation or become a monthly donor, it's very easy to do that. You can go to our website at guyfinley.org/donate, and you'll see all the ways that you can support us there. In fact, if you scroll down on that page, you'll see other ways that you can support us, even things like leaving a donation to us in your will. Just scroll down on that page and you'll see many ways that you can help us out with our mission here. And we do appreciate the support. And all of the donations that are made are tax deductible in the US. So we thank you for that. We're going to start our Q&A, and if you want to participate, you can just, if you're on GoToWebinar, go ahead and raise your hand, and that will let me know that you wish to speak with Guy and ask a question or just talk with him. If you are on YouTube or Facebook and you want to interact with Guy directly, you can actually come on over to GoToWebinar, and that's a way that you can have that direct interaction. You would just go to guyfinley.org/letgo. guyfinley.org/letgo, and that will take you to a page where you can just sign right in to GoToWebinar. We're going to be broadcasting here for at least another half an hour, maybe even 45 minutes. So you have plenty of time to come on over and get joined into the GoToWebinar stream as well if you want to talk with Guy. And you also can reach out just in the chat area or in the question box and send a note. And I do have a couple of leftover questions from our last couple of classes, so we'll get to those questions here in just a moment. All right, I think that we can go ahead and get started. Guy, there are no hands up in the queue. Would you like to make some opening remarks, or how would you like to do this?
Well, I thought, just for fun, we would, I'd ask the room, for instance, would it be a Herculean task to say yes instead of no all the time? Isn't that pretty much the first thing out of the mouth? Nope, nope, no. Wonder what the journey would be like if somebody said that something. I go, hold on. Okay. What would be a Herculean task for you? Hands. You know yourself. What would be a Herculean task for you, Denise?
To let go of my identification with a person or an artifact of my past.
An artifact from your past?
Like material objects.
Okay. So, and I think what I'd like for you to do, because this is, remember, faith without works? This is your work. One task, nothing more. One. What would be one Herculean task for you to do, Debbie?
Step off the drama stage of my life.
Step off the stage in the middle of high drama. One task. John.
Stop pretending to be perfect.
I didn't notice. Wayne.
Stop judging myself.
Stop drugging myself? Oh. I said, you better stop drugging yourself. He said, stop judging myself. Can I catch the moment of judging myself? And at no matter what, choose to observe it instead of explain it. Chris.
Complaining.
Herculean task. I live in an unceasing complaining nature. Nothing's ever quite right. Herculean task. Yes.
Worry.
The Herculean task of catching Dana, starting to ramp up the worry machine, and then realize, wait a minute, my task is to observe the worrier, not to participate with the worrier. And if I actually did that, what would I discover? I'd suddenly realize there's something that can see this worrying nature, and I don't have to be what I can see if I can see that it's no good for me or anyone else, I might add. Who else? Terry.
Not give outward expression or invert dialogue to someone's behavior.
Not comment to myself on other people's behavior. Yeah, form of judgment. Yeah, Drew.
Stop trying to please everybody.
Oh, Drew. Oh, Drew, what a day. She said, stop being a people pleaser. Stop being the one that smooths out every possible wrinkle on the planet. What'll happen, Drew, if I actually attempt the Herculean task? One time, do not make a mountain out of this. You must first see what the mountain is. That's when you're able to move it. What's the first thing that'll happen with Drew actually says, I'm going to withdraw from being a people? What's the first thing that's going to happen, do you think? You're going to hear every demon in hell screaming at you, you have done something from which there will be no escape. Let them scream. Then you'll know something about them that Drew doesn't know, and you'll know a little bit more about what's true for Drew. Yeah? Withdrew from Drew. Who else? Ellen.
Not wallowing in guilt.
Oy vey. She said, not wallow in guilt. How many of you go, do you understand that when you relive anything that you said to someone, it is out of guilt? Do you know that? Why else would I relive something I said unless something were comparing what I could have or should have said and I didn't? Therefore, I could have been better than I am. Therefore, I am guilty of not being who and what I imagine myself to be. So you have your tasks. Each of us, which is so special, each of us may say, well, I deal with that, but not the way Ellen does. Each of us has a task we're given. The seed to shed the husk of the past, the conditioning, and to discover what only we can see, and then go on to become something else. Okay, Kate, in case something happened over on your side.
Oh, lots happened.
Okay.
Let's see here. Well, first of all, I just want to say a couple of people chimed in online with your Herculean tasks. Gloria said to set a good example. That was her Herculean task. And then Claudia said, my one task is to abide in the silent seeing rather than engaging in the commentary, inner and outer.
Okay.
All right, we have 5 hands up in the queue, and I have 2 leftover questions. I'm going to go ahead and read one of the leftover questions here first while I'm on.
Good.
Let me just grab it and send to you. This came in from Dawn last, I think it was last Wednesday. And there you go, Guy. So Dawn asked the question, Guy, wherein lies the judgment of the moment? Is releasing that responsibility a key to going further?
The real responsibility is to see that you have no sense of self outside of what you judge in the moment. That is my sense of self. I have to have you to judge, to be me. That means that I am dependent upon someone to judge. Do you ever think to yourself that you depend upon people that you don't like? Do you understand the question? Do you ever think, I'm really dependent upon those people that I'm negative toward? Do you ever think that to yourself? Or does the very fact that you judge them prove to you that you're somehow separate than them? Boy, if you could see that much, it would change something if you'd explore it. Next one, Kate.
Sorry, you caught me there a little quickly here. This is a question that came in from Susanna actually on our Friday night talks.
Okay.
But she asked if you would also answer it. And here it is. Guy mentioned to shut down the negative thoughts, but then he mentioned to be aware of our negative feelings, and our awareness will dissipate, melt the feelings. When do we do which one?
Susanna, never shut anything down. Why would I shut something down? Do I shut it down because I understand it? I shut it down because I fear it. Never shut anything down. There is a difference, Susanna, between suppression and observation. Our consciousness suppresses anything that doesn't match the image we have of ourselves in that moment by comparison. Observation allows us to catch the consciousness that doesn't want to see itself as it is. We remain with seeing ourselves the way we are so that we can explore what we're given to see in that moment. If I shut it down, I've said this a gazillion times, I never get tired of it. Can you possibly resist a moment and have any revelation from it at the same time? Or is resistance and revelation antithetical? So I mustn't resist anything. But that doesn't mean, on the other hand, that I embrace the negativity. It means that instead of resisting, instead of shutting it down, instead of suppressing it or trying to repressing it or suppressing others, how many of you know you suppress negative behavior in other people? Why do you suppress negative behavior in other people? Because that's the only way I can repress my own. Suppression, repression, they go together. So don't shut anything down, Susanna. Don't try to melt the feelings. If you put an ice cube out in the sun, do you have to try to melt it? Do you? What happens? Under law, you bring under the light of self-observation the parts of yourself that you've been trying to escape, and they will begin on their own to dissipate, because you'll understand you can no longer, listen to this, you can no longer keep that consciousness in place by not wanting it. You can no longer keep that consciousness in place by not wanting it. Resistance is identification. Over to you, Kate.
All right, we have 5 hands up in the queue. I do have a couple more written questions. And of course, if anyone in the room wants to join in, just go on up to the mic and Guy will let me know. But we're going to start off here in our queue with Imogen.
Okay.
Hello.
Hi, Imogen.
Thank you very much. This is just brilliant. I hope this doesn't make you scream and throw your papers up in the air, because I'm just not getting it. I've been at this open doorway, and it's all no's. Don't be sarcastic. Don't be judgmental. Don't play this game of regrets. And it's all so true and so useful. But what do I do?
Okay. Take a nice deep breath, Imogen, and everybody. When I'm judging someone, I'm impatient, I'm trying to control someone, trying to avoid someone or a situation. What's underneath all of those actions? What's underneath all of those actions? And I'll answer it. I'm in pain, and I can change the situation, escape the pain, if I can control or change my environment. Yes or no? Out loud. I don't fight with you because I'm happy. Fight with you because I'm suffering. But I blame my suffering on you. So the bottom line is, I don't know what else to do with my pain except try to change or control the conditions outside of me. That's all I know to do with my pain. is to find something outside of myself that if I can alter it, adjust it, change it, get you to be other than you are, then I'll be free of my pain. But we know that that doesn't work. Yes or no? So we have never, if it's true, let it be true. I've never found out what's beyond that pain. I've never found out what's beyond the pain of guilt. I've never found out what's beyond the pain of worry, because when I reach guilt, worry, anxiety, when I reach regret, the pain always gives me a path. I always take the path the pain lays out. I've been taking that path, reincarnating that consciousness for 10,000 years. Today, I'm going to do the Herculean task of not allowing the pain to tell me what the path is. I'm going to go beyond the pain. How do I go beyond the pain? I have to enter into it consciously. It becomes conscious suffering instead of unconscious pain. Unconscious suffering is what happens when we see the suffering of a consciousness that does not know what to do with its own suffering. That's what conscious suffering is. When we see a consciousness that does not know what to do with its pain, and that it says it knows, and it has pushed us around for millennia. And so for the first time, instead of allowing that pain to tell me who I am, what to do, who's responsible, why things aren't right, instead of allowing that to do it, I stop right there and become the witness of that consciousness instead of the handmaiden doing what it tells me to do. And in that moment, I will see something about that consciousness. The exploration of my own consciousness begins there. And if I explore it, then I'm no longer under it. Now I am a discoverer instead of someone deceived by an unconscious relationship with it. Let's go on, Kate.
We're going to go to Larry in the queue next.
Wake up, everybody.
There you go.
Hello, Guy. Thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Sure, Larry.
Information. I feel like I'm coming out of a lifelong dream that I made up myself, and I've been sparring with me and no one else. And I appreciate the tasks that I have, and I'm beginning to see these things, and it's taking me a long time, but I feel like I'm freeing myself. I feel like kind of a new person because I am beginning to see these things. I'm actually beginning to see them in action when I'm going through it.
Yeah. And that's
amazing.
It isn't, you know what, Larry? There is, a long time ago, Mr. Howard was talking to some students. I remember I thought, what is this guy talking about? He said, you live in 100 degrees of heat. He said, if you do your work and you reduce that heat by 0.5%, you'll think it's a miracle. And you know why you think it's a miracle? Because for the first time in your life, you know you've been living in 100 degrees of heat, and now you actually know it's possible to not live in that heat. Now you know it's possible to use the heat instead of let it burn you up. So what Larry's describing is he sees, you know what? It's possible to change. And it's also possible to change, and I'm not actually doing the changing. I'm just willing to observe all that is unchanged in me and realize that I have to find another moment, another order of awareness in those moments. Nothing better than that, Larry. Keep up your good work. Over to you, Kate.
I'm going to bring in this question that came in from Joe, who's watching on YouTube. And Joe says, I watch a lot of your videos and you reference consciousness a lot, but I don't know what this is. Thank you.
It's a lot bigger of a question, Joe, than I can answer in a few seconds, but ever so quickly. And go back and maybe some of the other talks I've spent time on this. A paramecium, a bug, a beetle, a bird, has simple consciousness. Simple consciousness is the awareness of something other than itself. That's simple consciousness. Me and you, duality, simple consciousness. Nature puts these two creatures, this consciousness and the conditions it meets, together to develop herself through that relationship, simple consciousness. The next order of consciousness, Joe, is that instead of simple consciousness, you and I can start to be aware of simple consciousness. I can be aware of something in me that wants to make you separate from myself. I can be aware of a consciousness that wants to blame the condition for the conflict I'm in. I can be aware of that consciousness. That's another order of consciousness. It is no longer under the same laws as the one that believes itself to be separate from what it sees. Now it realizes it has some relationship with what it sees, and that what it sees is a reflection in itself of itself. That's another order of consciousness. Another order of consciousness beyond that is when a human being begins to understand what Buddha was talking about. If a tree falls in the woods, no one's there to hear it. Does it make a sound? Now one begins to realize that everything that I experience is inseparable from the consciousness in which it's reflected. It's one thing. Job nods to Job, said Emerson. That's another order of consciousness. And then there's another order of consciousness. So it's not that simple, like there's just consciousness. My Father's kingdom has many mansions in it. Those are different levels of awareness and understanding. You are those things, Joe. You are the tree of life. You are the manifestation of all kingdoms. That's what it means to be made in the image of God. Our task is to be something that begins to explore all of these realms that are part of our own consciousness. That's the work. On we go, Kate.
All right, we're going to bring Michelle into the discussion. Michelle, you'll need to unmute on your end too. All right.
Oh,
There
here
it
we
is.
go.
Contact.
Good morning.
Hi.
I think you might have already answered it, but you were talking in French because it's so hard for me to grasp about everybody who's ever spoken to me. I probably have punished. And I want to forgive it myself. And do I need to apologize to people? This talk just showed how I blame everything on everything.
Yeah. Listen to me, Michelle. I'm going to answer your question slightly differently.
Okay.
I don't know whether to approach it pragmatically, but I'll just say it the way it's given to me. To be a sleeping human being is to live in a form of constant sin. The sin doesn't mean I am morally bankrupt and beyond reconciliation. The sin means that I've missed the mark. I would never know that I've hurt people, let alone have remorse over it, if there weren't something that shows me from time to time by a light that I cannot yet be in me, go before me, but that reveals to me all that I have been and done. And I don't want to be what I have been and done anymore, because I see the damage. I feel the pain of it. I don't want to push people around. I don't want to punish people. I don't want to drop passive-aggressive commentary into my dialogue. I don't want to enable people. And yet this consciousness that has fallen, that's all it knows to do, and our culture globally is dedicated to its continuation, because that's the only way this consciousness knows to deal with its missing the mark. is to hate itself and then blame others and change others so it no longer exhibits the mechanism of itself. But the machine can't change the mechanism, Michelle. The machine can't alter the way in which it interacts. It's a machine. And that's what I want you to understand as best I'm able to convey it, is that this immense pain that you have for having been Michelle belongs to that consciousness that did the very thing that now it's telling you have to feel bad about. Don't you dare for a moment go into hating yourself or punishing yourself for the things that took place in your past. Instead, use all of that energy and bring it to bear upon the present moment so that Michelle, her Herculean task is to catch that consciousness ready to pounce. And instead of pouncing, to sit back and to watch it want to pounce, and then watch while you can't stop it. Then you'll know something that no one else on this planet knows about their consciousness. And that is, Michelle has been the servant, the slave of an order of consciousness that she never knew before. And that's where the rebellion begins, with that first Herculean task, and suffering consciously when you see that of yourself you can do nothing. As you see that, you would be given what you need to do to understand, and you will gain gradually the ability to suffer yourself consciously. Only then will you begin to withdraw, abstain from those negative acts. I have to go on, Michelle. Work with that. Let's talk next class. On we go, Kate.
Okay, we have 2 hands left up in the queue. We're going to go to Steve next and then Tracy.
Okay. Yeah, the people that want to come up, wait until we're done with this portion. Then everybody out there can listen to you, David.
Okay. Hi, Guy. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Steve.
I got to take a breath because this talk inspired me so much. And I just wanted to ask one question after the comments of just thank you. Everything by offering truth and the functionality that it, like the personal way that you can experience it, that is the faith with works in
Yes.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding that properly, that
You are saying it
it
properly.
is walking the talk.
Rest is nonsense. It's a dream. It's a dream. We want comfort, not consciousness. We want the past, not possibilities. There is no possibility in the past, and there is no consolation or reconciliation in comfort. End of story. But you do or you don't. That's not my business. Back to you, Steve, if there's more.
Sorry, I unmuted him. There
Yes.
he is.
Yeah. No. It's just I just get so inspired because now I'm understanding all that you've been sharing for months, and to me the faith with works is actually what you're saying. It's walking and seeing the truth in yourself as it's revealed, and accepting and working with it ongoing. It's just very inspiring, and I'm just grateful, and I'm so thankful to have the opportunity to continue this work.
Sure, Steve. Glad for you. Picture an unending lotus flowering. Petal after petal after petal after petal after petal after petal. That's actually what you are. And by the way, the reason the lotus is revered in the East is because its roots are in the mud. Its flowers is in the sun. Back to you, Kate.
All right, we'll end our online discussion with Tracy, and then we'll open it up to the room there.
Okay, David can't wait.
Good evening, Guy.
Hi.
Hi. I had 2 things, but I think you answered my question with your answer to Michelle.
Okay.
My sister confronted me with some behavior she said I did all my life.
Yeah.
I felt like I was gut punched because all of a sudden, all the memories of all the people in my life, I saw how I was trying to control their behavior so I could be comfortable.
Exactly.
So now I just take that. I don't beat myself up for the past, but I take and I watch and I try to become aware when that is coming in again.
Yeah. You want to hear something delicious?
Yes.
I was down in LA yesterday. Anyway, I gave a talk, and one of the ladies at the table, she said, "So what you're saying, and this relates to what you've asked me, she said, what you're saying is that we have to accept ourselves." And I said, where in the world did the idea of accepting yourself come from? What are my choices? Please, and I actually said to her, well, let's see, if I accept myself, it means that there's a me that accepts the me that I don't want to be. Well, who's the me that accepts who I don't want to be? Who's the me I don't want to be? What choice do I have? See, this is the human hallucination, is that I have a choice whether or not to accept what I see. We believe we can deny what we see. We believe we can deny what we see. That there's some intelligence in not wanting to see that I've been a controlling human being my whole life. Because why? Because I've had the explanation and I've affirmed myself that I shouldn't be that way. No, you're still that way. But if I actually understand that I am being given what I need to see, listen, please, by something that of itself can't change me. The revelation, that light that dwells in the darkness, if it were capable of changing the darkness by itself, there'd be no darkness. And the darkness that's revealed by that light can't change itself, because if it could, it would have, and it wouldn't need the light. But the light that lives in the darkness, that reveals the darkness to itself, brings about another character, brings about something that allows that light to act, because something has to sacrifice what has been shown to itself about itself. That's the appearance of the Christ, the appearance of the possibility of real transformation. Not, I just accept this and I'm changed, because you're not. And not, I shouldn't be like that and I won't, because that does nothing. But to allow those two things to come together and you to consciously experience what happens when something in you shows you what you have been and done, then you understand it's a fool's game to feel guilty. It's a fool's game to feel sorry for myself, to regret. Regret is a fool's game. Remorse is the natural relationship between the light and the darkness coming together. Because when there's real remorse, you exit that moment a different order of human being that went into it. I hope that helps. Do I have speakers now, Kate?
Yep, no more hands in the queue, no more well, we have a couple questions, but I'm going to save them for Wednesday, so let's open it up to the room.
All right, we've been waiting breathlessly. Come on. Denise, you can follow. Anybody, those of you that want to remain for 5-10 minutes more, we have speakers who are going to come up and show you their brilliance. They're going to show you all that they know and impress you with their presence. Take it away.
Hi everyone, my name is David.
Do you have a volume knob? No, on you. I want to turn up David's volume a little bit.
Well, actually, I'm speaking like this consciously.
You are?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because my default behavior is bluffing.
Yeah. I got it. An actor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Just watch the actor too, because he's in there.
Yeah.
Okay? Go ahead, please.
Yeah, well, that's why I came up here, because I want to see this actor. And also, I want it to be seen that he's scared, petrified of being seen as stupid. and saying stupid things, petrified. He is petrified because...
Is his heart beating fast?
My goodness.
Yeah, I can hear it over here.
The whole body is...
But see, what's so beautiful about that is that now you understand there is something that has had David's life. It runs from fiber to fiber all the way through from that level of consciousness. And what you're doing is saying, I'm not going to have that life. I'm going to observe it until I realize it has no authority. Then you begin to be in the right relationship as the observer of the actor instead of acting out what always produces fear, which is the pretense. It's grand.
Well, I was thinking my Herculean task would be to not be scared.
No,
I can't do that.
No, that would be a fool's errand, and it would create more fear. Because then I'd have an image of myself as someone who shouldn't be afraid, and then I'll be right back to the actor again, right? So it's just a loop.
Yeah.
No, the Herculean task, can you figure out, knowing what you want to work on this fear of being seen in a certain way.
Yeah.
So what would the Herculean task be for someone who is always projecting a certain image and let's be quite clear, locked into that, right?
Yeah.
Pretty crystallized. What would be the Herculean task?
To be who I really am, which is this, fearful.
To watch the fear and not let the fear talk. So in some ways, that's what I was alluding to. You want to slow down your roll, so to speak. That's great, but if you're not watching it, it's still an act. If I'm not present to the heart pounding while I am doing what is revealing the fear, then I'm still caught in it. I have to make it worse in simplest terms.
Yeah.
Make it worse,
Yes.
not better.
Yes.
Do you ever do anything foolish?
Not as much as I'd like to.
Exactly.
do.
No, that's it. Hit it on the nail.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to be here for a while, right? You're going to stay for a while?
Yeah.
We'll get some foolish stuff. Okay?
I'm excited.
Yeah. And that was an act. I'm kidding.
My name's Denise, and in the interest of trying to be more clear, Denise has spent so many years building up layers of this husk of identifying with certain people in my life, certain roles at different stages of my life, that she's built up and not doing the work at that time that would have changed it, so that she's built up what you used to call a hall of records. And so the Herculean task for me at this point, when I see the journey getting naturally shorter, is to let go of these things, these pictures, these mementos, these internal records of these roles and people that she's still attached to, that I'm still attached to.
You know Scripture pretty well.
Yeah, well.
No, you know it pretty well, with your background and all that. How did that story go when Christ was talking to a man and he said, "Follow me"? And then he said, "Well, I would."
If I could sell all.
No, but I've got some harvest that's got to get put away in the barn, and I've got these other things that I have to take care of. And as soon as I'm done with all that, I'll get to you.
Yeah.
No long face. No long face. That's the task. That's the task. It's always the task. It's always the task. And no, you think when a human being awakens that they're not having to do Herculean tasks? It's just they're not afraid of them. This life is the task of giving yourself up. How could it not be that? So, as we've talked about for some time, that's okay. And don't you think to yourself, if I could have, if I should have, I would have. That's all trash. That's all nonsense. Now, it has to get pretty bad, doesn't it? Yeah. See, in a way, that's the beauty of the work. So many people, it gets bad and then they go away and they blame the work or they say it was never to be. So at some point, it gets so bad, I'm so tired of being afraid. I'm so tired of lying to people. I'm so tired of pretending to be something I'm not. I'm so tired of acting, so tired of enabling, that one day it's there and I can't avoid it. And at that point, I will attempt the Herculean task, really attempt it. And if I see myself fail, all the better. Because now I know something about Denise I couldn't have believed. Because I say, that's what I want. Now I say, you know what? That's not what I want. Holy mother of pearl, who doesn't want to have a life with the divine? Who doesn't want to be free of this? Then you've got some new grist for the mill, Denise. You get that grist in the mill, that separation process going, you'll start being really hungry and thirsty for more of that kind of exploration instead of always explaining yourself to yourself, right? Yeah, good.
Hello, my name is Eric.
Don't you give up.
The whole idea about accepting yourself, when you mentioned that, I thought of what you said before, which was the idea of a lotus. And that the whole idea of we are the lotus.
Yes.
We are a lotus. And the whole idea of accepting yourself fades away, is seen as an illusion. Because being the lotus, it's a living thing. It's one thing, a living thing, having a life.
Yes. Not divided.
Not divided. And so, Herculean task, I was going to say brooding. You know, watch the brooding. But connected to that also, am I remembering right that in The Wizard of Oz, that the Cowardly Lion would say, put him up?
Put him up.
Put him up. Put him up. I mean, really, that's perfect.
Yeah, it is.
Because only a coward says, put him up. Somebody who's deathly afraid says, put him up.
Exactly.
And that's what Eric does when, you know, whenever anything gets in the way of how the moment, each and every moment should be. Put them up. And so...
And you're a big lion.
Yeah. So to bear, the task would be to bear that.
Yes.
Not to suppress it or pretend it's not there, but to bear it and then pain the bear.
Yes, precisely.
Hi, I'm Patricia. Like Guy said, we were in LA for a couple days and Guy gave a talk. And it was exactly what Guy talked about today. My overview of the last 3 days was we were in a wealthy area. We were in Malibu and Calabasas, and people were successful. And as I watched people, especially successful or wealthy people, there's an air about them, there's a confidence, but it's not based on their being, it's based on their image. And same with like walking around Malibu, which is beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. They had a lot of rain and everything was flowers and green. But even fashion, you know, they walk a certain way and there's a confidence, but it was based on how they thought they looked. And I've seen that in myself, you know, but you could see how fashion is never going to go out of style because that's how people know themselves if they're drawn to that. And it was just so interesting that everybody was not from their being. They were from whatever they were identifying with, whether they were successful in life or the way they dressed or looked. So it was just an interesting overview.
Come on, Debbie. You know, one of the things that never occurs to a person is what do children do in their forts and fairy godmother cottages? What do they do? It's all makeup. I rest my case. If I have a made-up life, I live in an almost constant terror that something's going to challenge it. And you wouldn't believe how isolated the people are. You can smile at somebody and they don't even know you exist. And why don't they exist? Because they're so deep in the act. That's why we try as best we can here. For a Herculean effort for some of you, it would be to smile at somebody, to say hello, to be the first to say hello, not wait for somebody to say hello.
The thing about all that, there was an underlying pain.
Absolutely. Underlying pain. Absolutely. If you are a pretend person, you live in constant pain. Well,
speaking of pretend people, the reason why I know this nature is pretend is because I feel myself shaking. But I wanted to say, you know, I love sitting in my garden. I love working in my flowers. I just love it. And when I came to class this morning and listened to this talk, that's what I felt. There was such a spirit of something higher here. And I just want, not that all of me loved it. I knew there's real work involved, but I loved receiving what we were given. And I know, like I said, when you asked what would be my Herculean task, and it was to give up the part of me that lives in drama. But more than that, I could see, and I think this happens for all of us, there's a nature that lives to torment, just torment. It doesn't matter what it is. Afraid to speak, doesn't like what other people do. Whatever it is, it just torments us. And the Herculean task would be to start to see that that's not me talking to me. That's a nature that's tormenting me. And to walk off the stage of that.
Be a showstopper.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Wayne. I really like this talk because it really helped me connect something within my own life, and that is there's something that's always driven me, and that is this wanting to know what my purpose in life is. Because of the background that I grew up with, there was nothing but sorrow and pain, and I always would I always say that that is not me. I'm something else, and realizing that I was completely conditioned in this family and this society, in this whole judgment thing. Not just self-judgment, because judgment judges other people. I got very good at it, and comparing myself, constantly comparing, and realizing that the purpose is really to work with all this. That's instead of trying to prove that it's not me, and find out who I really am. I've heard that my whole life, or my adult life, and trying to find out who I really am. And it's always been running away from what I was seeing, this conditioning, if that makes any, I hope I'm making sense here. This conditioning of judging myself. My family was just embroiled in judgment. And to see that it's learning to see this whole thing in action in me as it emerges, and not run away from it. I think these are fantastic talks. It's helped me the work has helped me see more of this conditioning, and I want to do more. And I see how each one of these talks, how, Guy, you build on each one of these talks, and how it's important to work each time.
Yes.
It's, to me, it's just fantastic and a lot of revelation. I got one advertisement. There's asparagus in the back.
So last comment, because it's important, I think. I ask you to see. Right now we're in sort of our spring and summer, and it's breathtaking. I hope wherever you are in the world, it's breathtaking. But even if it's not, is there one blade of grass, one leaf, one flower, one bud, one tree, one cloud, one sky? Is there any one creature that exists in the moment that didn't come into existence with the purpose already laid out for it? Or does every creature come into existence with a purpose? Every creature comes into existence with a purpose. And you cannot separate the purpose of every creature from its relationship with the totality of the creation that gave rise to that individual form. Do you understand that? Yes or no? What happened that human beings have invented their own purpose? Consider the lilies of the field. They neither spin nor toil. Yet Solomon in all of his glory has not so beautifully arrayed. What is Christ talking about? As above, so below. Everything has been given to you with a purpose for you as an individual seed, just as the mustard seed, to fulfill. If you don't fulfill the purpose, then you're like the tree that grew no fruit. If you fulfill the purpose, then all you have to do is understand your responsibility is to be present in the moment when that purpose is called forth. Then you answer the purpose, and then you see when the purpose has been answered, you're free. The husk has served its purpose. Now you go on to the next understanding, and the next, and the next. See you on Wednesday.